I'm not sure who's going to win that. I think Worley might win that one to start because Worley has become very familiar with the trail jam that they do. It's a different kind. It's a little bit of an odd technique. So I think there may be a learning curve there, kind of like there was for Garyon Conley last year, where the first few weeks he wasn't really there, and then he kind of steps into that fray later. They brought Worley back on an RFA tag, so I think they're really looking at this going, we'll have Worley for a year, we give Mullen, we'll see how long it takes for Mullen to catch it. If he gets it in mid-season, boom, he'll be starting. There's a chance he starts day one. It's going to depend on how long it takes for him to learn the technique. So that's really all it comes down to. Now, Isaiah Johnson, I think Isaiah Johnson early on might be a tight end cover guy. Because
I was going to ask.
Think of Isaiah Johnson like Richard Sherman. He's a converted wide receiver to corner, limited corner background. But the guy's 6'3", 200 pounds. He's long and he's lean. I think if you're talking about trying to have someone who could cover an athletic tight end in pure passing situation, they might just man him up on those guys.
Yeah, because look who we have. The Denver Broncos took Noah Fant, and there's already a guy and the Chiefs have, and Travis Kelce. So someone's got to guard them.
Hunter Henry.
Yeah, and we don't have a linebacker who can cover that well.
Not like that.
No, not those guys. So it has to be bringing in a DB. I thought they would bring in someone like the guy from Virginia. They would bring him in.
Thornhill?
Thornhill as a safety to do that, but I guess they went a different direction.
Yeah, well, you just sub-package it. Now you make this your dime package, right?
Yeah.
So you come out and you basically bring in. You have your two safeties. You have KJ. You have Abrams. You leave them up top. You're going to have a single linebacker, probably Whitehead, and then you're going to have your four DBs out there. You'll keep Joyner on the wide receiver side, and then tight end side, when he's split out, you just bring out Isaiah Johnson and let him man them up the tight end.
Wait a minute.
He might come out and just completely wipe him out because he's that freaking big.
Are you telling me in nickel we're going to have the only linebacker is going to be Tahir Whitehead?
No, dime.
Oh, dime. Yeah. Even in dime, is he our best coverage line? I don't. Tahir is more like a Sam linebacker, I think, right? Because he's not gonna. He's pretty bad at coverage. I don't know if anyone.
Traditionally, he's a will, but if you go back and look at his coverage numbers in Detroit, he excelled in coverage. He was very good.
So
I don't know what happened last year. I think that was more about the whole defense being disjointed than it was necessarily Tahir just all of a sudden can't cover, because he was known as a coverage will linebacker from Detroit. So I don't like Mayock even talked about it when they brought him in. They brought him in because of nickel coverage abilities. So I don't know. I think it's really weird, but I thought he got better towards the end of the season. I think we'll see a whole different. I think it'll be a lot better this year.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the roster. We have 3 definite starters in the draft, and maybe 4. Jacobs, Cleveland Farrell, John Abram, and maybe Trayvon Mullen, right? And the other guys
would say your fifth one is Moreau.
Let's talk about him. He was one of our fourth round picks, because we had a few fourth round picks. Oh, by the way, before we get into that, a lot of people are talking, hey, who cares about the culture and leadership? Why not just get good players? I just want to point to C.O. Moore when someone says that. You don't want a guy like C.O. Moore in your locker room, no matter how good he is. I've heard reports when there were team meetings going on, he's blasting music in the locker room. He didn't want to go into the linebacker locker room for meetings. You don't want to have a guy like that. You want to have guys like John Abrams, the first guy to the meeting, hyping everybody up, not taking people away, to party when there's a meeting going on in in your thing room. So and it has a big play with it. And Derek Carr said earlier that, from 2016 to 2017, there were some locker room problems. And it's probably some of the guys that they brought in that weren't, team players. They're more like, by themselves. So I think that when you say, culture, Look at New England Patriots. They don't have guys like C.O. Moore. They don't tolerate stuff like that.
Look at if you want a greatest example, I think the greatest example of New England culture, the New England Patriots culture I've ever heard, was in Kill Harry. They were interviewing him after the draft, and they asked him, "When did you know about what New England having interest in you?" He said, "I got to be honest, I can't tell you anything because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say."
They shut him up.
That was his response. And I mean, how much of a New England Patriot could you be if that's your response?
Yeah.
I mean, that's talk about buying into culture, hook, line, and sinker, right? Like, that's buy-in. So, no, I'm with you. And, I think you make an incredibly good point. I think that is exactly it. This is a culture draft. Khalil Mack was a great culture guy. Say what you will. The contract thing went tits up. But what they did was they responded and decided we want to continue building a culture. They have a quarterback like Derek Carr, who's a work ethic-oriented guy, very upstanding citizen.
High character
Khalil
guy.
Mack was an upstanding citizen. You got to replace that kind of leadership with another guy. They got Clelin Ferrell for that. You got hard workers through the whole thing. Foster Moreau was right up there.
Oh yeah.
Now I don't know how many people know about what the number 18 means at LSU.
It's voted
From
on.
my understanding, the number 18 at LSU is given to the player who best represents everything it means to be an LSU Tiger. Foster Moreau wore 18 because he was that highly regarded. You're talking about a captain, a guy who's taken very seriously in all areas. I have been touting Foster Moreau for like a month, like pushing this guy as hard as I can. I mocked Foster Moreau to the Raiders. This is a guy who's in a run-heavy offense, who's insane, very, very good inline blocker, who has some insane athletic traits. This is one of the best athletes at the entire combine at tight end. In some places, a better athlete than Noah Fant. If you go look it up, some of the drills, he beats Noah Fant. So We're talking about an insanely good athletic tight end who nobody knows about because LSU ran the ball 85% of the time and couldn't pass. So I am extremely high on Foster Moreau. I could very much see him be the day one starter at tight end. So he is more talented than people give him credit for.
Yeah, no, it's a hard projection, especially tight ends, because it takes them some time in the NFL, or more than other areas. But he had good athletic numbers. One thing to look at, when you look at the stats, the nerds, they always say they look at what areas in the combine correlates to NFL success, and broad jump is one of the two. Broad jump and speed score, and he had a baseline for eliteness was 119 inches, and broad he had 121, so he did pretty good.
His 3-cone is really good too for a guy his size.
Oh really? Yeah, I haven't looked at that, but yeah, it's definitely athletic.
You're talking about a guy who's like 6'4". What is he? 264, 266, and I think his 3-cone might have been sub 7, but it's something like it's crazy.
Yeah,
like he has a couple drills where he is just off the charts.
6'4", 253 is his.
Oh, 253. I thought he was bigger than that, but yeah. Regardless, I mean, he's an insanely good inline blocker too. Like that's what he did for 4 years at LSU. They couldn't pass the freaking ball, so he blocked all the time. So he's very experienced as an inline blocker. And people kept saying, "Oh, Noah Fant," because they got to replace Jared Cook. John Gruden does not want an offset tight end. He wants a single tight end that's an inline blocker that does everything. That's what he's always had. I never understood this idea. We got to replace, Jared Cook talent for talent. Didn't make sense.
Yeah, and a lot of people were talking about we needed another wide receiver. I mean, you don't go out and take a wide receiver 3 that early, and we have 2 good ones. I was just surprised Hakeem Butler fell to the 4th round. It's just very surprising.
That was crazy to me. Crazy. Hakeem the Dream, man.
Yeah,
that was a crazy one.
We could have took him but he was the first pick in the 4th or something like that. I can't believe he fell that far.
But here's another one that fell like crazy. Kelvin Harmon. What is he, a round 6 pick?
Yeah, he went very late. It's probably because of his speed, Kelvin Harmon, and Hakeem Butler is probably because of his drops. That's the only thing I can think of.
And neither one had versatile route concepts. They're all vertical. Both those, all like DK Metcalf, same thing. Guy runs 3 routes.
Yeah.
You know, like those guys, they only run a handful of routes. That's why. Now, if you look at all of the early, look at Andy Isabella went round 2.
Oh, he did he?
Yeah, Arizona took him round 2.
Oh, no way. Arizona's it's got a lot of.
They took 3 wide receivers: Isabella, Hakeem Butler, and Keyshawn Johnson.
I think they're trying to build a track team over there. Not a track, yeah, trying to build a track team, and well, it's the air raid offense they're trying to build over there. Let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, it's interesting. But, I mean, when you look at it, and then the Raiders, they go take Hunter Renfrow in round 5. Like, that is your if I've always said that John, and I think you and I agree on this, John Gruden wants to be like Bill Belichick. He is your Wes Welker. Like, that's what he's going to do. He's going to be your guy who's going to run those little short patterns. He's going to be a safety blanket type. He's a guy who could catch a ton of clutch first downs for the Raiders. Like, I could see, like, on 3rd and 5, that ball is going to Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
I think he's a great fit for what the Raiders want to do.
Next guy in the 4th round was Max Crosby. Now, in the phone call, it was interesting. He introduced, when Mayock got on the phone with Max, he said, John Gruden's son named Deuce Gruden is a powerlifting champion. I want you to spend a year with him getting stronger. So I think what his plan is just to he's huge and athletic. He wants him to get stronger and maybe play the backup strong side defensive end, maybe even on the weak side. But I think this is going to be more of a year that he gets stronger and learns more technique. And maybe he'll fight with Arden Key for a starting job next year, in 2020. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think he's going to challenge Arden Key for that job because Arden Key is so good at getting wide that I think that's going to be extremely hard to replace in what Gunther does, because Gunther wants that weak side guy to get really wide because it helps collapse that pocket down. I think with Crosby, Gunther traditionally likes to have a rotational third defensive end. Sometimes it's a linebacker that comes into play defensive end on pass downs, but it's a guy that can play both sides. So ideally, I think they want to take that frame, add some weight to it, and look at him and go, yeah, I can put him on the strong or the weak whenever I need him. Because I think Arden Key, I think they might be finding that Arden Key is having trouble, like, bulking up, and probably is just going to sit right in that 245, 250 range, just like Michael Johnson, who had trouble bulking up. He just has a lean figure. So if that's the case, then they're going to need someone to bulk up and be that tweener that they can bounce at both spots. And I think this is your guy.
What's up with that? Did Arden Key not want to bulk up, or did he try and not do it? I don't know. What's up with that?
No, he bulked up to like the 250s for the season, but they wanted him to bulk like farther. They wanted him to get a little bit farther up, and it sounds like he might be even down to like 245. I'm not surprised. You look at that guy's figure and his build, it doesn't surprise me at all. And again, Michael Johnson had the same problem in his career. He had found it very difficult to bulk up. It was always right around the 255 mark. He's like 6'7", so he's just going to be a guy who's long and lean. And those guys exist and can be very successful weak side pass rushers.
Yeah, and you don't want him to get fat either.
The only problem for the Raiders is it just means he can't go bounce to the strong side.
Right, and you can't let him get fat either. Just you can't just tell him to eat donuts and get 260, 265 that way. So he has to be muscle.
Exactly. You need lean muscle, and if he's struggling to produce the lean muscle, don't push it on him. Then let him be 250 and let him do what he's very, very good at, and that's get wide and provide speed, and then find other guys to do the other jobs.
Yeah, and we have Mayo as well.
The perfect piece of putty.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts on Max Crosby overall?
I would prefer a guy like Anthony Nelson, but that's right where I figured Max Crosby would go. So it makes sense. Like, it's a very sensible pick. I have my preferences. I would have preferred Anthony Nelson, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I think that's